Hey, beautiful people. Hope you all are doing very well today. Welcome back to the Young and Independent Show, where we discuss a variety of topics to help young folks live lives that are spiritually fulfilled, lives that are value added, lives that are less materialistic, and lives that are financially independent. I'm your host, Sil, and today I want us to talk about traveling abroad without a plan. Are you planning to travel abroad? Do not venture if you don't have a solid plan in place. So many people, far too many people risk their lives. They burn their bridges in their countries of origin, mostly in Africa. And they set out for life that they see on Western movies, on TV screens, on infomercials. Because is traveling abroad really a saving grace, as most people seem to believe, or is it just another battlefield where they would have to toil for their daily bread? That's what this podcast is about. Let's talk about it. Let's be real. I know that traveling abroad is like a dream come true for many Africans who feel hopeless and helpless in their home countries. They are often under the illusion that the grass on the other side is greener, much greener than where they currently stand. And some even refer to the Western world as heaven on earth and will do all sorts of unimaginable things in order to go to the imaginary promised land. Most people are so desperate for an economic breakthrough that there's nothing you can say to them to dissuade them. When their mind is fixated on traveling abroad, that's all they want to do. Tell them nothing. You stay mute. However, the worst mistake anyone ever can do is to travel abroad without a plan. Yes, the economic conditions in most developing countries are tough, no doubt. And in 1950, Africa's population was only around 177 million, but has since grown to 1.341 billion in 2020. That's an exponential growth, guys, within a short span of time. Of this total population, an estimated 490 million people live below the poverty line, according to the UNCDAD 2021 statistics. Furthermore, to make matters worse, the Transparency International ranked Sub-Saharan Africa out of 49 countries, 44 scored below 33, which is far less than the normal average. With such level of corruption, most African citizens are robbed of good infrastructures, foreign direct investments, job opportunities, good schools, good medical facilities, and an overall acceptable standard of living. Unfortunately, given all the circumstances mentioned earlier, most Africans are fed up and desperate to exit from their suffering in pain, in quotes, into countries that they believe to be better options. Are they really any countries that are better? A Cameroonian left Cameroon and went to the UAE. This article actually was inspired by a post I came across on a Cameroonians in the UAE Facebook group. It broke my heart to see one of our own in such an inhumane situation. Rough sleeping in an alien environment can precipitate anyone into depression or even post-traumatic stress disorder. This guy made a post. He took a photo of this young man who was lying on cardboards. And he said, and I quote, "Please, my dear brothers and sisters, in the name of God, please let's try to help this our fellow brother who has been sleeping in this poor condition with no job besides Emirates Tower metro station. I have been trying my best, but I really can't Help him completely. That's why I am seeking for help in this place. That's the post he made on the Cameroonians in UAE Facebook group. And he left a picture of this young man. When I looked at it, people had, there were 100 impressions. Some people had tears. Some people had thumbs up. 179 comments and 5 shares. I didn't open them. But I wanted to write this blog because I believe that evil prevails where good people say nothing. This is evil. That's how I say it, at least. Sadly, just as the individual who shared the story with the Cameroonian community in UAE, I cannot offer any material help to this brother, but I sure can do something about informing people who are planning to make the same mistake. Ignorance, they say, is bliss. When you don't know something, it doesn't hurt you. But I want to tell you that ignorance is also deadly. If this brother had all his facts and had all the information that he needed to make an informed decision, I doubt if he would have chosen to leave his motherland to go and sleep by a train station in a completely foreign land where you know absolutely no one. Far too many people in Africa have left the devil they know for the angel they don't know, only to end up in the lion's den. In Africa, we claim to be the most religious people, yet we forget the very principles of the Bible that should be our guiding force. What happened to the famous Bible quotation that says, "My people are destroyed for the lack of knowledge"? That's Hosea 4 verse 6. Are our home countries that bad? Is it that bad? So much so that we're willing to put our lives on the line to migrate to a land that wasn't even promised to us. Abraham was going into the unknown because he was walking in God's instructions, on God's instructions, which isn't the case with many Africans who decide to leap into the unknown. We all agree that things may be very bad economically in most of our poorly managed and corrupt countries. No doubt. However, traveling abroad without a plan isn't the answer either, because failing to plan is planning to fail. I ask myself, why are most Africans disillusioned about life abroad? That's a question I ask myself. Then I remember that actually, most Africans who grow up in middle to lower income families would most likely admit to the fact that the image portrayed about the Western world on TV, on magazines, on infomercials, on all media outlets to which young African kids are exposed is what makes for love at first sight when it comes to the West. As soon as we see it on TV, on these magazines and all these things that we come across, we fall in love just by looking at it. Love at first sight with Europe, with America, with China, with Japan. Growing up, I always had this paradise-like image of Europe and the Americas in my mind. And it was always a dream to someday visit one of these continents. The Western world has the art of branding their country so well that shows you the absolute best that they want the world to see. But when you arrive at your dream destination, only then will you realize that perhaps you were better off in your home country. People abandon very good jobs back home in Africa to travel abroad, only to realize that they have left a life that wasn't at all that bad into one that depresses them every single day. How is Africa portrayed on TV versus the reality? When most Western countries show Africa on TV to their citizens, they seldom show the good. They portray all sorts of images of kids starving with flies in their eyes, carrying buckets of water and traveling long distances in red dust and all that kind of stuff. That may be the reality for some people in Africa, but that is not an honest reflection of the beautiful African continent where I come from. So what happens when people abroad see these images? They think that we are all starving to death, and obviously they don't want to travel to such misery. What happens then is that foreign direct investment is aborted. When people travel to your country, they pump money into your economy by staying in hotels, by buying from the locals, and they boost the economy of that country. That's why when COVID-19 came in 2020, a country in Africa called Mauritius suffered heavily. Egypt, which relies heavily on tourism to visit for tourists to visit their pyramids and their ancient buildings and their mummies, suffered terribly. So when all these images of Africa are portrayed on Western TVs, you don't get people going to Africa as much as they should, because Africa is beautiful. Africa is not a country, it's a continent, and it is beautiful. It is a marvel. When I was working for a logistics, I'll tell you a story. When I was working for a logistics company in Cameroon, we were nominated as agents for an American warship that was on a training tour in Central Africa. So the ship was going around Central African countries, training the military on how to counter pirate attacks on their waters. Before the arrival of the vessel, the captain ordered 340-feet containers to be placed around the dock where their vessel was going to anchor as some sort of protective measure. At that time, I didn't understand why anyone would incur such enormous charges. Guys, I just cannot say the amount right now on this podcast, but it was a lot of money. Just having those 40-foot containers every single day for the 2 weeks that they were at the port, stationed at the port. At the time, I didn't understand why anyone would incur such enormous charges just to make a vessel invisible to the other people who use the port. But then I asked the supply officer of the vessel, who obviously is American, why they demanded armed escorts for their travel in town, and why they needed containers around their vessel. And he said that they needed to ensure the safety of all crew members at all times and ensure that their vessel wasn't easily accessible in case they were going to be attacked. And I burst into laughter. I was like, this American ship looks like it looks like a war weapon on its own. It is insanely massive. Actually, if you want to see what the vessel looked like, please head over to www.youngandindependent.com and look for the article, or I'll add it to the description box of this podcast. Just go and look at that vessel and tell me who with their right senses will try to attack a vessel stationed at a port alongside other vessels, one that looks like a war machine on its own. I was very surprised. A few days after everything he said, a few days into their stay in Douala, which is a beautiful city, they no longer needed to be escorted by armed policemen. And they were very sad to leave. When it was time for them to depart from the Douala ports, they were sad. They had such a good time that their prejudice about Africa was a thing of the past. Also, most white people who have had the privilege of working as expats on African soil have lived lives they never dreamed were even possible. They enjoyed having a mate, a driver, a gardener, things that they don't have in their countries abroad. They enjoyed our diverse culture, our good food, comfortable place to live, beautiful women. and a kind and welcoming community. The list just goes on. My French boss, I remember, he cried. He cried like tears flowed down his cheeks on the day of his send-off to France. His work was over in Cameroon. He needed to go back to France. And he cried and he said to me, I'm going to miss my time in Cameroon. I had such an amazing time. I felt so bad for him. I can imagine that he thought, oh, I'm going back to this boring life where I'm a nobody. Meanwhile, Africans are over here in Africa, they see movies and all the branded media content, and they start to hate their lives, believing that traveling abroad is a summit of success, and therefore they do everything and anything to achieve this goal. I bet that if anyone had tried to dissuade our sore brother from traveling to the UAE, he would have cursed and all hell would have broken loose. Did he have a plan? Did he know what he was walking into? Was he lying on cardboard when he was back home in Cameroon? I wish I could ask him these questions. Africans in the diaspora have to tell the truth. Did you know that some people abroad don't even have a roof over their heads and they sleep in their cars, some on trains, others on sidewalks, some at the entrance of metro stations like our brother? I have never seen as many homeless people in my entire life as I did when I first arrived in London. The 6th richest country in the world, where we are all scrambling to travel to. I have never seen that many homeless people. I used to work at Premier Inn in King's Cross in London, and homeless people would just camp at the side of the hotel. They will walk into the hotel to use our bathroom to shower, literally. I mean, there's no place there to shower, but that's where they come and brush their teeth, and they try to just clean up what they possibly can clean up. Imagine sleeping under an unstable tent on a cold and rainy winter night. Gosh, London is cold, guys. When I saw this group of white and black people who looked so hopeless, my jaw dropped and I asked myself, is this the Obodoyibo dream that people are burning all their bridges back home to travel to? Hell no! I couldn't believe my eyes. So I compiled, I did some research and I just was shocked by the statistics that I was able to come up with. Like, gosh. Some people think that the white skin is perfection and everything abroad is like a rose garden in the movies. My friends, this right here is the reality for most people abroad. Let me tell you something. Popular Western countries for Africans who aspire to travel abroad. Statistics of homeless people. As at 2021, France, 300,000 people. 300,000. These are the people that they could account for. United Kingdom, 227,000 people. Germany, 678,000 people. United States, 580,466 people. Canada, 235,000 people. I'll end the list there. I remember writing a story about Evelyn, who went from trial to triumph after she was trafficked from Cameroon to the US. Cameroon, where she possibly would have gone to school and had a normal life as any young woman. I could only imagine her excitement when she boarded the plane at the age of 9, headed to the land of plenty, to the country that she so dreamed about, only to end up in modern slavery. also remember coming across a story on the BBC about an African man who traveled from Zimbabwe, I believe, and lived on buses. After he got to the UK, his asylum application was denied. This man lived on buses for 21 years. Guys, 21 freaking years he was living on buses. I'm sure that Sonny, that's his name, thought that as soon as he got to the UK, he would find his way into the system and start living his best life. But little did he know that this part of the world is ruthless. Everyone is busy trying to stay afloat, which means most of the time you are on your own. If you look closely at the images I shared on the article I wrote, most of the people who are, homeless, they're just sat there by the streets while other people are walking past them, going about their business like they don't even exist. That's the image of the West that people in Africa may never ever see on TV. According to Business Insider, 60% of millennials who earn over $100,000, that is 50 million CFA a year, say that they are living paycheck to paycheck. What that means is that if their paycheck for the next month, the following month doesn't arrive, they are broke. They're homeless. They don't have money to pay rent. They don't have money for food. They don't have money for anything. That's what paycheck to paycheck means. So they earn 100K a year, but they're still struggling. Why? Because the standard of living is too high. Imagine what you would do with 50 million in Africa. While 31% of British workers are a paycheck away from being homeless. 31%. So the entire United Kingdom, 31% of them are a paycheck away. So if they don't receive their paycheck, they're homeless. A homeless study done in Canada revealed that 14% of the people who are identified as homeless are newcomers, according to a 2018 report. Of this total, 8% indicated that they were immigrants, 3% were refugees, and 4% were still applying as refugees. Yet when they're going home, most of them are struggling to rack up loans, to buy stuff, to impress upon the people in Africa. Why? Is that necessary? Why do we choose to give this impression of what isn't? Let me tell you a little story about an African who faked life abroad and ended up in a big mess. It's a real life story about a Nigerian couple in the UK. So the woman's father died and her siblings in Nigeria asked her to help to bury him. So her husband said, you know what, honey, we're only going to spend £1,000, which is around 543,000 naira. That's what we're going to contribute for this burial. And he told her that, listen, we can't spend more than that because we have our own bills to pay and we have young children that we need to support. The woman pretended to be okay. Her siblings, back home, the story that her sister had told them, the kind of life that she had portrayed, gave them the impression that she was very wealthy. Her siblings compiled an extravagant shopping list and included 10 cows, many ashowebis, all the things that you can imagine, all types of meals, and all that nonsense, and sent it to her. The wife, she took upon herself and she went and took a secret bank loan without her husband's knowledge. She sent £20,000. That is £19,000 more than her husband had initially suggested that they spend. She sent 11 million naira to her siblings, who of course used the money to execute a burial that was the talk of the town. When her husband saw the pictures of the grandiose ceremony, he asked her, How come your family could afford such a lavish burial? Your brothers were changing clothes, so many food, so many cows killed, and she stayed silent about the loan. Months later, unfortunately for her, she lost her job. And she needed that job for her monthly repayments. So when reality hit, she was in a pickle. She couldn't tell her husband she had taken a loan without his knowledge. Their bank began pursuing her and writing to her. And on this unfortunate day, the postman came to the house. The husband was in, but she wasn't, so the warning on the envelope prompted him to open it. The wife had put her family's finances in jeopardy for no reason, and the husband felt betrayed and hurt. When she got home, he asked her about the loan. She concocted a story and didn't sit well with him. And he decided to show her the bank letter. After such a deception, the man lost trust in her and vowed to stay away from her. So what? She lost her marriage, she endangered her children, and she racked up debts. To do what? To show people in Africa that life is easy abroad? Give me a break. Give me a break. Now that she's in this financial mess, who is going to come to her rescue? And this story is true for many diasporans who try to live an impressionable life of lies, trying to give people the impression that money is, picked on streets and that life is easy abroad. And this is the very reason why people back home don't even respect our efforts. They don't. They have little or no respect for our hustle because they feel that it's easy out here. But guess what? Not all that glitters is gold, may be as old as the Bible, but it remains true to this day. I'm going to conclude this podcast because I can go on and on. But what I want to say is that Africa's location isn't always a hindrance to success. Far from it. Due to misinformation, lifelong TV viewing, and ignorance, many people believe that they can only succeed financially if they travel to the West. Many people who travel abroad without a plan end up worse than they were back home. Some die, while others become vagabonds, wandering the streets in despair. But it will be very unfair and biased for me not to say that there are people who travel abroad, most of whom travel with a plan, who come to bush, in quotes, and who succeed. They do well. They get into good professions. They build businesses. They work for good companies. And they live a good life and provide the best quality that life has got to offer for their families. They become successful. They become great. That's fantastic. This is what I wish for all Africans. But the important takeaway from this article and this podcast is that you have to have the full picture of life abroad. And you have to have a plan before you make such a big move. You have to have a plan. You have to have a plan. I really do pray and hope that this podcast, reaches as many young people in Africa as possible, so that Africans can make a conscious decision to do all that they can do, which obviously is enough, before they venture to travel abroad. Because this part of the world, my friends, is brutal. it's brutal. It is brutal. So just be aware of what you're getting into or what you're planning to get into so that you don't walk into fire before you start looking for water to quench it. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this was educative. I hope this helps someone. I hope this blesses someone. Please share it, and share it with all your friends and on all your social platforms so that we can save a life. You can follow us on all our social media platforms. For those of you who are back in Africa, www.youngandindependent.com. That's our website. On Facebook, we are Young and Independent People. Please join the community so we can share opportunities and better each person's life. On Instagram, Young and Independent 35. And on YouTube, Young and Independent. Until next time, do take care.